Hi, I'm Dr. Leslie Smith. I'm the Director of Culinary Medicine and Integrative Medicine at SIU School of Medicine. And I'm going to show you today how to make black bean brownies. So this is a really healthy recipe, very, very low in sugar and very high in fiber and other nutritious components. So this is super easy to make and it's really popular for the holidays. So I'm going to use my food processor. And what I'm going to start with is first 1 can of black beans that I've rinsed really thoroughly and they've been draining for a little bit so there's no additional moisture. Then I'm going to add half a cup of quick cooked oats, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and I happen to use Dutch processed, that's what I had in the pantry, but you can use any kind of cocoa powder. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And I just wanted to kind of note for people that there's a little bit of a difference between baking soda and baking powder. Baking powder is baking soda plus cornstarch. So if you don't have any baking powder on hand, you can always use baking soda and add a little bit of cornstarch. There's a whole bunch of recipes online that you can look up for that ratio. Then the next thing I'm going to add are some oils and sweeteners. So this is 1/3 cup of agave syrup. You can use honey, you could use maple syrup for this, any kind of sweetener. This one I like in particular because it's a combination of agave and stevia and monk fruit. So it's very, very low glycemic index, but has a very high degree of sweetness. Then I'm also going to add, to kind of complement that, a little bit of stevia. Stevia is a leaf, just like mint or parsley, that is a plant. And so because it's a whole plant, there's very little processing to it, and it's very, very healthy for you. You're getting kind of all the phytonutrients that come with the plant as well as the sweetness. So just a little bit of stevia leaf, a pinch, to add additional sweetness and kind of depth to the flavor. And then I'm also going to add I'm going to look at my recipe here for how much, a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I used a little bit of oil that has some butter flavoring in it to give a little bit more richness in the flavor. And then the last thing I'm going to add is a tablespoon of vanilla extract. I personally really like vanilla bean paste as opposed to extract, and I just kind of put a little shot in there. Now I'm going to put all of this on my food processor and grind it up really fine. So now that you can see that this is really, really fine and is much more like a brownie kind of consistency if we were making a regular brownie mix out of a box. It's nice and thick too. So can you see how nice and thick that mixture is? And now what we're going to do is add chocolate chips. I didn't have any chocolate chips on hand, and so I had a chocolate bar, and so I just chopped that up to about the size of chocolate chips. I'm going to stir that in, and I used a really high quality, very high concentration of cocoa powder, so that again I'm not getting a whole lot of milk solids and a lot of sweet additional sugar, but I'm getting a lot of that chocolate flavor. Let me just mix that in. Now I'm going to pour it into a greased 8 by 8 inch pan. Certainly if you don't have an 8 by 8 inch pan, don't let that stop you. You can always use a pie pan or a slightly larger or slightly smaller pan. I wouldn't do something like this though in a 9 by 13 or something that's twice as big, because then your brownies won't be very thick. So we're going to pour all of this batter. I'm going to get all into my edges of my pan here and get all the goodies out into the pan. And if I weren't cooking at home, then I would use my finger to kind of scrape off the last little bit. Obviously, if I'm cooking for other people, then I'm going to use a pair of gloves for that. And just smoothing it out so that everything cooks nice and evenly on the top. And then using a little bit of the last few chocolate chips that I reserved to just kind of sprinkle on top of the brownies. And you might have noticed that there's no flour, there was no processed sugar that went into this recipe, and the only leavening agent that we have is that little bit of baking powder. What we do have though is tremendous amounts of fiber and healthy proteins from the beans. And then lots of good fiber and the other components to make a complete protein with the oats. Now I'm going to put this in a 350-degree oven and show you in a few minutes what that looks like when it's done baking. These have been in a 350-degree oven for about 15 minutes. You can see that they don't spread out a whole lot whenever you bake them. They kind of stay exactly the way that they were. But we've got our nice chocolate chips on top and they smell amazing. So now I'm going to let them sit on the counter for about 10 minutes to cool. If they do feel a little bit underbaked, if they're still a little bit soft, you can put them in the refrigerator overnight and they will poof right up. But these have, like I was saying, they have a lot of fiber from the beans, a lot of fiber from the oatmeal, and then the combination of the oats, the whole grain, together with the legume makes a complete protein. So this is actually a very, very healthy dessert option with a very low glycemic index. Hope you enjoy.